The man
Call somebody,
is back,
tell
y'all.
somebody.
We're
He's
back.
Call
He's
your
back.
mama, call your daddy.
We're back and we're back.
We're back.
Tony
The whole
McGee,
crowd's back, y'all.
We're back. Tony
Hey.
McGee. Come on.
Tony McGee, Pro Football Plus. Tony McGee, Pro Football Plus. Tony McGee, Pro Football Plus. Tony McGee.
Well, I told you the whole year that San Francisco would be in the big game, but I didn't tell you they'd lose 2 quarterbacks, 2 turnovers, and a second chance to go to the big game. But at the same time, they represented KC. They let us know from the beginning they are automatic. And when this Super Bowl goes on and you got the Philadelphia and KC, that's going to be real. And we'll be back to tell you why.
What's up?
As I said in the opening, we looked at the 49ers. I looked at them all year. And one thing we said about them, if they could avoid injuries, they'd be a very good team. We also looked at Philadelphia. We knew that they were a good team, but both of them were evenly matched. But you can't lose 2 quarterbacks and expect to win. And Donna, that was a big part of that game. You lose 2 quarterbacks, you can't even throw the ball. So what do? You went out and got some people that's going to tell it. David Aldridge is back in the house, ladies and gentlemen. We had to pay big money to get him. I don't know if we can really keep the lights on. Then we went back and we got Kelsey. Kelsey, everybody been saying, where's Kelsey? Where's Kelsey? Kelsey, your people got you back on there, but you know the job anyway. Last but not least, we got number 89. I tell you what, the Santana the Moss man is here, and he's not growing on rocks. And the ratings is back. Hey, ratings. That young lady you sent last week, I don't know if people knew that she was only 14 years old, and she did an excellent job. You got some work to do today. But I tell you what, guys, we all got work to do, because if you look at it, these playoffs, and if you look at the last thing, one thing we can't say, the 2 best teams are in the Super Bowl, Donna.
Yeah, Tony, I think you hit it head on when you talked about San Francisco. When you come into a game, and I don't think I've ever seen it in a playoff game, a championship game, where you lose 2 quarterbacks. You lose Brock Purdy in their first possession, Tony, and then early in the third quarter, you lose Josh Johnson, and you're going to bring in Chris McCaffrey, hopefully to try to, rally this team, and he's the running back, so you're going to take away from that. But then they brought Purdy back in, and they were one-dimensional. They could just run the ball. Who would have thought that, San Francisco would, with the dark cloud over their head, and you couldn't even script this up, Tony, the way that played out for San Francisco, because that was something crazy to watch. Pal Shanahan trying to put this team together, piece them together after you lose your quarterback. And it was just a crazy situation. And then you look at Philadelphia, it wasn't like Jalen Hurts played a solid game. But when you, like you said, Tony, when your team lose their top 2 quarterbacks, and then you're trying to just piece this team together, and the defense for San Francisco, this was uncharacteristic of them, that they had 11 penalties that kept Eagles drives going, Tony, and they just did their stuff in all the way down. It was just a snowball effect, Tony, for the 49ers that did not get better.
But Kelsey, did I see what I thought I saw? Even though after the injury, it seemed as though San Francisco was still able to hang in there. And what we have to say, yeah, they lost their 2 quarterbacks, but that was their 3rd and 4th string quarterback. So that tells me one thing. Had they been healthy, which we've been saying all year, San Francisco would have beat this Philadelphia team. What do you think, Kel?
Tony, I don't know if I'm going that far to say. I've been saying all season long, I know we've loved Brock Purdy and what he's offered, but he is still a rookie quarterback. And the Philadelphia Eagles still have a great defense that I think would have put pressure on him. Now, yes, as Donna mentioned, it hurt to see him go down after 6 offensive snaps. But all in all, San Francisco couldn't get anything clicking. And yes, I know it's hard when your 2 quarterbacks, Johnson and Purdy, throw for under 100 yards. And then when Purdy comes back into that game, of course, he's not able to do much. They're trying to run the ball and trying to throw a couple of screens. But all that to say, I think San Francisco, they finally got a true match and a true test. Right now, Philadelphia, they're playing lights out. Hassan Reddick was having a field day against San Francisco's backup tight end, getting to the backfield. So I think all in all, I think San Francisco's offensive line, unfortunately, was not prepared. And obviously the quarterback play wasn't prepared. But I think this also goes on the coaching staff, because it seems like when they had Josh Johnson play as a backup, he didn't look like he was experienced to do much. And let's remember, this is Johnson who came into the league back in 2009. I was a junior in high school at that time. So he's been in the league a long time, but this was his first playoff experience. And honestly, it wasn't obviously a good thing to do. And, you see George Kittle's post-game conference just saying, when that happened, there really wasn't much that San Francisco could do at all. So all in all, their offense, you could blame the quarterback play, but they really weren't able to get anything going. Christian McCaffrey wasn't able to get anything really going on his leg. So it was just a disaster on both sides of the football for San Francisco.
Do you guys think, and I asked the wide receivers out there, do you think they could have made it a little bit easier, maybe ran some short routes, give him opportunity to try to throw? Because as Kelsey said, they became one-dimensional, and that just took away from the whole game. Everyone knew what they were going to do, and it looked like they could have at least hit the tight end or anything that I'm sure his arm wasn't. If he can hand the ball off receivers, do you not think he could have maybe tried to get it to the receivers a little more?
Tony, let's go back a little bit. You said that the San Francisco hung in there. Where did they hang in there, Tony? This was almost over after Purdy went down and then Josh went down. It was no hanging in there for San Francisco.
I thought they hung in there pretty well until the other young guy.
21-7 at the half. 21-7 at the half.
That was only because of the 2 turnovers I mentioned in the opening.
Okay, they wasn't hanging no more.
But at the same time, they still were in that game. If you would think about it, when those turnovers occurred, it was like 14-7 or something like that. So yes, they did get a big lead, but at the same time, we can't say if and buts and all that. And Dave, you saw the whole game. But did you think they did not play pretty well after they lost both quarterbacks? They still looked as if they could get back in the game.
Well,
no,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave. You go first.
No, the turnover was the killer before the half. That's you're thinking. You were thinking at worst, we don't score and we get the ball to start the second half and it's 14-7. But instead, you fumble the snap. And now they have a short field and they walk in for a touchdown. And then essentially the game is over at that point. But, I said this during the game. And of course, the Kyle Shanahan acolytes jump you immediately whenever you criticize the king. Why the hell has he got a backup tight end blocking Hassan Reddick?
Exactly.
The season on the line,
exactly.
To a Super Bowl. And that's the game plan coming out. We're gonna have a backup tight end block Hassan Reddick, who has double-figure sacks on the season. That's just to me a ridiculous game plan. That's not. You can't say that is going to be successful. So to me, the coach let down the players as much as the players let down the players yesterday. They may have lost anyway, but I know I'm going to lose blocking Hassan Reddick with a tight end that doesn't block really well. So, I just didn't get that at all. And you wind up getting your quarterback hurt. And then you are out because your backup quarterback didn't get any snaps during the week. So he's not ready to play. And then he gets hurt and then it's over at that point. But I just think that to me, I thought that was a really, really bad decision going into a championship game.
Well, if you take a look at the two teams, one thing we did understand about that is both of them had number 1 and number 2 defenses. We also wanted to recognize that they both had decent offenses. They were the complete teams that were out there. But you also found out that once you lost the passing game, it was non-existent for a running game, Santana, that for San Francisco to have. And everybody thought the running game was one of their major strengths.
Yeah, one of the things about that game, once the quarterback went down, it was a wrap then. You was right for a moment. San Francisco made things look like it was going to be a game because their defense flies around and get after the ball. But when the offense couldn't score, couldn't move the ball, and then the other quarterback went out, now it was just like, I guess you could say, those guys kind of like put up the flag, white flag. They kind of gave up. I had these two teams evenly matched when it came in, when I was asked throughout the week what I thought about the game. I did pick the Eagles. I've been picking the Eagles since, preseason, saying that they should have been the best team in the NFC East. Didn't think they'll go this far. But I just believe that when that first quarterback went out, who would have thought? They was already down to their third quarterback. no one had in their imagination that, you know, they would be down to their fourth quarterback and then have to be down and have, you know, McCaffrey back there taking snaps. So I think that was one of the moments when you really saw, you can say what you want to say about Kyle. I think the world of Kyle. You know, David just talked about him having certain guys blocking a DN, like, you know, number 7 they had over there for Philly.
Riddick,
Kyle does so much with his offensive line and the misdirection here and there. Sometimes you can get away with that type of stuff, but that particular game, those guys was ready, and I think Philly was just ready to be the better team, and that's why they seeing themselves going to the big dance.
Hey, G, do you think the receivers, and it's one thing that I want to see, and I want to hear from you, do you think Philadelphia receivers, it looks as if no one has been able to cover them the whole playoffs?
Well, I mean, they run good routes. They have excellent quarterbacks. So it's easy. I mean, it's pitch and catch. When it's pitch and catch, you know, that's Santana. When you got a quarterback that's hitting you on the spot and you're running great routes, you can't help but to have good things happen to you and win football games. And that's what they're doing right now. They're playing great football, offensively and defensively, quite honest.
Donna, we've talked about a lot of different things, but one thing that we haven't talked about is the offensive line is someone that their offensive line has been very formidable during this whole playoff, during the whole year. And now they're talking about they may be the best offensive line in the game.
Well, Tony, when
Speaking
you
of
look
Philadelphia.
Tony, when you look at the way Philadelphia blocked in that game on Sunday, it was amazing as far as them pushing around because, as I said, Jalen Hurts didn't have an exceptional game. And he's still nursing that shoulder injury, but he didn't have to do a lot and everything. He was 15 or 25 for 121 yards, but it was their running game with Miles Sanders that did a great job as far as for Philadelphia. And they just pushed San Francisco #1 defense around, Tony. And like you said, their offensive line just dominated that defensive line. And I guess wear and tear after being on the field for the majority of the time. But still, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line probably is one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL this year. The way they played on Sunday and how they played all season long.
If someone tell me, what is the edge Philadelphia has in this game? We'll talk about Kansas City in our next block and everything, but do you look at Philadelphia, do you think they are actually the best team in the NFL? Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best team. Yeah, right.
Now, last week, everybody was talking about they thought Cincinnati was one of the best teams in the NFL. So now you're saying that
they're
Philadelphia.
not playing right anymore.
That's out of it. I mean, Tony, anytime you outscore your opponent 69-14, you're definitely playing great football. I mean, Philadelphia, there's a reason why Jalen Hurts is smiling after that game and debuting his girlfriend for the first time on national television. He's happy right now with the product that's on that football field. And I think right now everyone's giving head coach Nick Sirianni his flowers. I mean, to get the team to that point. I think on paper, the Philadelphia Eagles look like the best team one of the best teams going into football this season. But, you know, sometimes everything you read on paper doesn't always transition to the football field, but they were able to do that. And they've been playing dominating football against opponents in the postseason, folks, not even just in the regular season. So right now, as Donna said, I mean, Jalen Hurts is still nursing that shoulder, but if his offensive line can continue to protect him and if his defense can continue to step up and hopefully force some turnovers, this Philadelphia Eagles team, I think it's going to be singing a fly chance in Arizona after the big game.
Yeah,
I don't know about that all. I think Kansas City may have something to say about that.
It'll be a good one, but Eagles
like
have
you
been
said,
dominant.
Yeah, the Eagles come in. They were 5th as far as rushing the ball. They were 9th as far as passing the ball and 3rd overall. So they pretty much was at the top of the tier all season long. And although you were praising the 49ers all year long, Tony, those Philadelphia Eagles was just dominating all the way. And you know, not taken away from San Francisco because they had ran off 10 or so wins and everything. But when you lose quarterbacks, during the course of the year, and it wasn't just these two, but they lost other quarterbacks in the course of the year and rallied past that. But it caught up with them in the most important game of the season for them.
Well, you know, we got 1 minute left, and I'm going to tell you what surprised me most of all, and whoever answered this question, we got to keep it in that minute. But even though they lost their quarterbacks, did you not think that San Francisco's running game would have picked up a little better? It just didn't seem like they put anything together to really have a running game. It seemed as though once the quarterback got hurt, the running game disappeared. And on the other side, I thought Philadelphia could have ran even more, but they didn't really have to. So we really don't know what we're going to get there. But one thing we do know, when we come back, we're going to talk about Kansas City. I'm not even going to give a question about that. We're going to talk about Kansas City because a lot of people out here doubted them. And one thing about it, that young man, once you put him back there, bad leg or not, he's going to get the job done. We need a few of those in Washington, D.C. Oh, did I say that? We'll be back in a moment. Well, now we've been talking about Philadelphia, and everyone has said they are the best team in the playoffs. They'll be the best team in the Super Bowl. But now we talk about Kansas City. Last week, everyone was saying Cincinnati is dangerous. Cincinnati is ready for the big game. Cincinnati was there last year. But at the same time, Patrick Mahomes came in there, high ankle sprain, which if anybody know anything about injuries, that's one that's very difficult. He probably hurt more today than he did on Sunday. But at the same time, this Kansas City is a team that they got playmakers. They got an outstanding coach. The only thing I'm worried about, guys, is their defense.
I didn't say Cincinnati's going to beat them.
You didn't say it.
I didn't say it.
I guess you and I was the only ones saying
Yeah,
it. Everybody else was talking about Cincinnati.
Hey, Gary,
Cincinnati.
I recall Tony saying, well, Patrick Mahomes cannot win this. Takes more than just him. But I mean, he willed that team to win, Tony. Him and Kelsey comes in. Travis Kelsey comes in with a back injury that he hurt on Friday. And both of these big-time players played big time in that game, Tony. And then they lost 3 of their receivers during the course of this game. But what's interesting is that the week before, Cincinnati's offensive line just dominated a Buffalo Bills defensive line, but they didn't even show up. They got pushed around by Kansas City's defense in that game. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, like I said, he played playmakers. Ankle was not 100%, but still, Tony, he played. And Joe Barrows didn't look like the same Joe Barrows than he did in the course of the season. He looked like he was off his game a little bit.
Well, we know going into that game, and Dave, you know that's even better than I. Going into that game, everyone was saying that the 2 best offenses was in the AFC, and they were true with that. But at the same time, they were saying neither one of the defenses were the ones that anyone has a big fear for. Do you see that in the Super Bowl? Do you think that Philadelphia will be that dominant because their defense is that good?
Well, you mentioned it earlier as well, Tony. The receivers, the Eagles receivers are just dynamic in every way. I mean, you know, they are really difficult to cover. And I don't know that I trust Kansas City secondary to hold up. The question is, can Chris Jones and the D-line, can they put pressure on Hurts against that offensive line that is really good? And we'll get 2 weeks to rest now with some injuries that they've had. And I'm not sure that they can get enough pressure or cause enough turnovers to keep the Eagles from scoring. I don't know that Kansas City can win a shootout, but I think that's the only way they can win because I don't think their defense can really slow the Eagles down.
Hey, Santana, you were shaking your head like you agree with that.
I mean, honestly, when it comes down to just the receivers alone for Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City going to have to bring it. Chris Jones going to have to be clicking on all cylinders like he was this past weekend because if Jalen Hurts get any time, and I think he's going to have a lot of time because that run game is potent. And one of the things about what makes their offense so difficult because not alone they're worrying about, the 2 running backs in the backfield. They have to also account for Jalen Hurts when he takes off and run. And with all that being said, he can sit in the pocket and dice you up. So those receivers, that tight end, I don't think Kansas City has what it takes on the outside. I see them struggle year in and year out. This past weekend, they had a good they had a good matchup. You know, Boyd went down. They had a good plan when it came to doubling Higgins here and there, doubling Chase. When Boyd went down, that caused things to, you know, kind of be a little difficult for Burrow and crew. But when you think about it, they lost by 3 points still. You know, Burrow was sacked 5 times. He threw 2 interceptions, and they still lost by only 3 points. So if you look at all that, they just barely got out of there. And I think, because I went for Cincinnati, I was rooting for Cincinnati to beat these guys. I thought coming into the game, I told a friend of mine, I say, look, man, all this stuff I'm hearing about the mayor or the governor, whoever that was who spoke out, and all this stuff about Burrowhead Stadium, to me, that was a setup. That was too much bulletin board material. You know how that is. Playing in this game, you can't give the other team anything to thrive off of. And just knowing that they had that bulletin board material just to go out there or look at the whole week, I kind of felt like Cincinnati was setting themselves up for failure. But they still hung in there and played a tight game. But Kansas City going forward, they have what it takes offensively and defensively. I just don't see those guys being strong enough in the secondary to stop Philadelphia Eagles.
Hey, Tony, a question for you. Does that scare you right now with what Santana said? Because like he said, they only lost by 3 points. So when you look at the defense and everything, does that scare you right there as far as for Kansas City moving forward, going up against a defense like the Philadelphia Eagles? They're going to need a lot more than just, you know, what they've got on the offensive side of the ball for Kansas City.
That's how we're going to tell how the injury, how bad it really is, because he would need to be mobile against that really stout defense. And I'm talking about the total defense. At the same time, you look at Patrick Mahomes, that's been his big thing, is his able to make big plays, make things happen. Now you got 2 weeks before that game, and you have to take a look at that. They have to be concerned with that because they cannot win without him making plays. He will have to make some big plays, some extraordinary plays. But as we all know, and all you athletes as well as everyone up there on the panel know that a high ankle sprain is a 2-month injury almost sometimes. Mm-hmm. You never get over it a lot of times during the course of the year. He has 2 weeks, and I think that will be the big difference. Even though going in, and I will admit that now that San Francisco is out, Philadelphia is the best team. But at the same time, just as on Sunday, the way Kansas City and the quarterback willed themselves to win, because that's a very good point. They only won by 3 points, and they had to do that at the end of the game. So therefore, you tell me that they are vulnerable, and I'm looking at Philadelphia being the best team. But at the same time, you have to watch Kansas City. They've been there and they've done it before.
Hey, Tony, what happens, Gary, for you? This is for you. Kansas City had 3 of their receivers go down, and then one had a hip injury, and these weren't like major, one had a knee injury too, and one had an ankle. So you've got 2 weeks to prepare for this Super Bowl. Can those receivers get back in time enough, be nursing like the knee injury and as far as the hip? And if they don't have these receivers back in Super Bowl, what does that do for Kansas City and their offensive weapons?
Well, I mean, I always looked at it as a chance for another star to be born. You know, I mean, perfect example is Tanner. Tanner goes to the Jets, right? And you know what? He comes to Washington. He just straight shows to freak out. So, I mean, I'm always worried about the guy who's behind me. That's who I'm always worried about. Because typically your backup should be better than what you are. I mean, that's just what it should be. I mean, Ricky was better than me and Art both, talent-wise. He just was. You know, but I knew that, so I kept on point in my game because I knew how good he was. You know, so at the end of the day, I think it's a time for somebody to shine. Like, honestly, I think Kansas City wins this game walking away. That's just my personal.
You said walking away.
Chelsea, I know you got something to say. Because, I saw your eyebrows.
I mean, you got the guy that beat Brady.
You don't feel that way.
That's the way I look at it.
I like Kansas City. And, I think something that not enough people are talking about, Kansas City, and I have to give praise to their secondary that was able to make somewhat of a difference playing 6 rookies Kansas City played. So I think that does get some praise. But, Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, and it was great to see the celebration after, because I really felt like they took that game personally because of all the disrespect that the Cincinnati Bengals, and yes, that mayor displayed to them, as Travis Kelce alluded to in that post game. I still just don't think Kansas City is as complete of a team right now. Now, Travis Kelce, of course, is playing lights out football, a future Pro Football Hall of Famer, but Travis Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes, I mean, they can't carry the load all by themselves. And as Gary kind of was alluding to, it really is at any given Sunday. Now, Pacheco played pretty good this past game. It's going to have to be other guys that step up. And yes, Chris Jones is great on defense, but can this defense step up again to stop the Philadelphia Eagles when A.J. Brown, is going to want a big game in the Super Bowl? We knew he was mad the week before because he didn't have enough catches. When you have Devonta Smith, who can do, anything. I mean, the Eagles have so many weapons. It's going to be hard to block or stop them. I think if Kansas City wants to win, though, something they did do well on defense this past game, after receptions, they were able to hold Cincinnati to 4.5 yards after the catch, which was huge. That was a huge thing for Kansas City. But again, it's going to be hard to display that again against a Philadelphia Eagles team who Jalen Hurts has any quarterback would dream of what Jalen Hurts has to throw to, and then the running game. Let's remember, Philadelphia got here too because they can run the football. The one team to stop Philadelphia running the football was, right here, this Washington team, right? And that's why Washington was able to defeat Philadelphia during the regular season. But Philadelphia, the fact that they can run the ball against you and throw the ball against you, Gary, I want to see if Kansas City is able to just walk away with that. That would mean Philadelphia is just going to have everything going wrong. But right now, they're truly believing in themselves, and I feel like they're destined for this win. And Jalen Hurts, I think he knows that this will be the little cherry on top of the icing for all those who doubted him, and if he was able to play. Because one more point, at the beginning of the season, people were talking about if Philadelphia should draft a quarterback before this season because they didn't know if Jalen Hurts would be the quarterback of the future. But I think his play this year has cemented him in Philadelphia and with Philadelphia fans.
I mean, I'm just saying, I went to my first Super Bowl. We underdogs. We're supposed to lose the Super Bowl. We're not supposed to even be in the Super Bowl. So I've been in those shoes before. And when I say we walked away, we walked away. It was over.
But Gary, I'm still going back to the Santana.
I'm just saying, when you got great players and they rise to the occasion, I can have a high end. I mean, we've all played hurt when we shouldn't have played. We all have. Everybody on this panel has played pro ball. Has played hurt when they shouldn't have. And quite honestly, a lot of times you had a game of your lifetime. The game of your lifetime. My best game statistically, my hammies were shot. Both of them were. But I hated the Giants so much, I ain't giving.
But see, I'm still wondering if Kansas City has enough bodies to move forward, because if you don't get these three receivers back, and Dave and Santana, you can jump in here.
Donna,
do they have other bodies that can stick up, that can come up and play? But you don't know that, because you look at the Eagles and you talk about all the weapons they've got solid as far as A.J. Brown.
Come on,
they've got Sanders, they've got Redwell. I mean, Kansas City is running out of bodies, and if they don't, I'm looking at, can they get these receivers back? And if they don't get these receivers back, what then?
Hey,
and
Tony,
I don't even know if somebody else can step up and play those
The
positions.
posse was born after the Super Bowl.
Totally
the posse
different.
didn't even exist during that Super Bowl. It was born after that, but those players were already there. What I'm saying is, a lot of times you have players that you don't know are ballers. Nobody knew what Ricky Sanders was until he broke that record.
I would say this, that you saw Valdez-Scantling have a huge game when he was really the only receiver they had left, and he was still able to get open, scored a big touchdown for him. Kelsey is going to be healthier and harder to guard, harder to check. If you don't, yes, you need to get some of your receivers back, but the way they're going to win this game, to me, is not by throwing the ball. Like Kelsey said, the one team that beat Philadelphia when Hurts was on the field was Washington. How'd they do that? They ran the ball down Philly's throat. That's how they did it. And that's what Kansas City, I think, is going to have to do. They're going to have to run the football a lot. Now, whether that's with Mahomes or with Pacheco or their other running backs, I don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
And like Gary said, when the Redskins played the Broncos, who was the guy that shocked the world? Timmy Smith.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever heard of him. It was like literally nobody knew who he was before the game. He got 200 yards rushing in the Super Bowl. It can happen. It does happen. So it is possible. I grant you. My concern continues to be for Kansas City. How do they stop the Eagles off?
Yeah.
I don't know that they'll be able to do. But the one way they can stay in this game is by controlling the clock, not letting that offense be on the field for 40 minutes, like they've been the last couple of weeks.
And they will have to do it with their offense for the simple aspect that their defense was suspect going in anyway. They've lost people. And now it's beginning to look like, and we will not mention names, but they let a certain player go to Miami early in the year, one of their top receivers. And not talking about the individual who were hurt in the Sunday game. You talk about you let 1,000 yards go, and now you need that 1,000 yards back. And the only way they can, as you were saying, David, is they can control them by controlling the ball. But we don't know if they have the people now. We'll see. We'll be right back.
Right now.
Well, you know, we've been on for a long time. 38 years we've been on this show doing the same thing over and over, waiting for the Washington teams to go to the Super Bowl. So we thought in these last couple of weeks this year that we would show you some of the flashbacks, how we used to open shows. Now, one thing, disregard how we looked then, because you have to realize this was 20-some years ago. Check it out. Hope you enjoy it.
The Washington Redskins are still in first place, even though they lost to the Denver Broncos. I think there are 3 reasons that they lost to the Denver Broncos. The first one is mistakes. You cannot make that many mistakes if you're a good team and win these type of games. The second is Denver is a pretty good team, ran the ball very well, something we did not expect. Last but not least, officials' calls. We can't afford to go on the road to Washington Redskins and get that many bad calls and hope to win. Speaking of calls, when we come back, we'll talk about Kansas City, but in our lost and found department, in Denver, out of the officials' locker room, these glasses were found. If you want these glasses, please give us a call tonight. We'll get them to you, but right now, we know exactly what you were seeing.
You're traveling through a different dimension, not of sight, sound, but of mind. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the no-play zone. Under protest, Tony McGee has agreed to do this show. He's implemented a self-imposed gag rule. His hands are tied because he's aware that if he speaks his thoughts about the LeVar Arrington situation, someone will be angry. Therefore, the 3 points for today are turnovers, red zone scoring, and pass rush. We'll be back in a moment, and hopefully Tony will resume his role as our host.
The Washington Redskins are 4-2 and number 1 in the East. Let's hope they don't lose their heads in New York, like I did in Sleepy Hollow, New York in 1776. The points this week are control the ball, rush Eli Manning, and special teams play. We'll be back in a moment in search of Ichabod Manning.
If you don't tell us who gave you that Redskin playbook, we will take care of you and your family.
You will come clean before this day is up. You better tell us now.
And if you don't give it to us, have you ever been hit by a 300-pound lineman? Let me tell you.
Today on Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus, we will be interrogating this witness throughout the day. It may be ugly, so put the young children to bed. But before the day is over, we will have an answer. Our points for the day are turnovers, pass protection, and stop the big play. As I said before this show is out, we'll have an answer. A couple of the Washington Redskins had issues with socks last week, but they still won a big game against Philadelphia. They have a big game this week against Tampa Bay. All of them must be on the same page. Speaking of being on the same page, for 21 years I've been the captain of this ship. I've never had to worry about my co-hosts ever doing anything crazy, wearing crazy socks, doing childish stuff. They've always been the people that I've needed in the foxhole with me. But I tell you what, when you come back, you get an opportunity to see how much in control of this show I really am. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome to the show. The Washington Redskins lost a big game to Tampa Bay last week. Yes, they made some mistakes, but yes, the officials made some mistakes. And one official felt like he need to come forward and make a public apology. Welcome to the show, but why the mask?
Tony, I really feel reprisal here. Eggs, a lack of notoriety, perhaps. I wish to remain anonymous.
Any particular plays that stand out in that game?
Washington fans and Coach Gibbs, Mike Allstott was stuffed. Yeah. And the defender, he didn't push that guy out of bounds. No. And it wasn't offsides at the goal line. Coach Gibbs, we're really sorry. And Washington fans, please, because we wear stripes, don't hate us. We just sometimes are erroneous and expeditious, but don't hate us. That's all I have to say.
You heard it here first. Nice glasses.
Yes. Thank you for finding these in the Denver locker room. I feel better now. I hope I can see.
We'll be back in a moment.
You said you'd improve.
Don't you remember 3 weeks ago?
I thought we were in this together.
I told you it would take a little time.
When will you do your part?
You have not been flawless.
I thought our goals were the same.
What makes you think they aren't?
To many of you, this may seem like a lover's spat, but to the trained ear, this is something that may be happening in a certain locker room between an offense and a defensive football team in this area. By the end of this show, my crack staff and I will determine who is right and who is wrong. We'll be back in a moment. The Washington Redskins have lost 3 tough games in the last 3 weeks. Some feel it's because of officiating. Some feel it's coaching. But I know one thing, if this team is going to the playoffs,
each and every player
needs to take a look at the man in the mirror. We'll be right back.
Well, we're glad that you saw that. We'll have another set of these for next week, and maybe we can get Donna and a few of them in a little bit more, because they did some very funny things. But one thing I have to say, this beard wasn't always white. We'll be back in a minute.
Hey guys, back for my last time. I'm gonna miss you guys, but hey, we're gonna have fun today. Today is gonna be a workout that's gonna be straight chaos. And Donna's gonna tell you if she ever finishes it, but I believe she will. Come in just like this, bring it into your chest. I want your elbows parallel to the ground. I want it down like this when you're coming in. You're coming in, keep them elevated. You don't have to touch the chest if you can't. Take it back, get a nice stretch. Bring it again, and you always pause, all right? And when you set, and go. Hey, now you know you left the light on in the bathroom, right? Oh, I'm switching my phone.
That's an extra ride for you.
Look at that. Alright, let's start the clock. Wait for more reps. Going down, touching the body every time. Hold, take it up. Shoulder time right here, and back down. Touch every time. side. What kind of muscles working? Keep going.
Secrets for a midget.
Well, because I had a person in here with short. So that right there needs to be at least 20. That's 15. 18. Okay. Here we go. Now we start to cook. Yeah. Come on, I see you back down. Get back to that 20. Come on. All right, here we go. That's it.
Well, Tony, Ricky has kept us in shape all season long with great workout, nutritional, and as far as strength training.
But I tell you what, Donna, I was looking at that. That was outstanding work. And I tell you, some of those exercises that he had him doing.
Whatever. I wasn't cheating, Gary.
Was she cheating? Gee, was she cheating, man? Come on.
Hey, if you hadn't been there, you'd have heard me breathing heavy, and that was no cheating.
I thought we saw that a little
Get it in, though, Donna.
Yeah. I'm trying to get Tony to get there.
Hey, Santana
but you know what? I want to jump to some
talking about you when you was doing it, Don.
No, I ain't said a word.
That was like, gee, she
that's the reason I can do those 50-mile and 30-mile bikes rides in the summer because Ricky has got me in shape.
Wait, we ain't heard nothing but rumors about these 30-mile rides.
Hey,
Nobody
Tony, don't get
it's just like you average 20 points in basketball. We haven't seen you make 2.
Hey, Tony, you never follow through. But Tony, Ricky said he still ain't seen you come yet. But Tony, let's get to some NFL news. The offensive coordinator position, Eric Bieniemy, he's been the biggest talk right now as far as not coming back with Kansas City's rumors is that the Washington Commanders want to interview him, but I don't think he wants to interview with them because why would he come from one offensive coordinator job to another one with the unknown? What's you all's thought about Eric Bieniemy and that situation there, and the fact that he's been trying to get a head coaching job, didn't even get a call this year, and really, to me, didn't even get full considerations in the past years. What's your thoughts on him?
He's a head coach. He shouldn't want to take another offensive coordinator position.
I agree.
He's a head coach, and I think that somebody better give him a call for a position because it won't be right. It hasn't been right. I think for all these years that he showed what he's capable of doing, and to see this team back in this game again, this is the third time in 4 years? Yeah. And I understand they're going to talk about, the offense coming from the head coach and the things that he did with this for so many years over in Philly. But he has the title and he has his implement on their game plan as well. So he deserves, just like all these other coaches that come from underneath that Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan umbrella that's getting these jobs. He deserved one too.
Exactly. What's the most disturbing thing right now about him not getting a head job, coaching job? Everybody said that his interviewing and all of that, even if he didn't interview great, everybody knows what his qualification is on the field, what he's done with Kansas City. What's going on there?
Was he interviewing for television or was he interviewing for a football job?
Exactly.
Who cares how they interview? If he know what he's doing, he know what he's talking about, yes, he should get more of opportunity. You got guys coming in 30 years old, 20 years old, 25, 30, getting first-time jobs and stuff. This young man, not only was he an outstanding player, he's been an outstanding coach in this league for many years. And you got people, look how many new coaches you have, and some of them have been successful. But at the same time, no one would give this opportunity to him, which he needs. And we look at just like the coach who got fired in Houston. I try not to use names, but I can remember a year he got fired, and he was 10-6. I remember other coaches. So you know what? One thing we got to say is only right. You can bring in new young talent if you want, and you think they're coaching. But at the same time, when you got a guy like Eric there, and he's been there for years doing the job, and you can't seem to get him a job, something's wrong with the league.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great for Washington if Bieniemy came here to get a chance to call plays, which he doesn't do in Kansas City. But that's irrelevant. Just like Tana said, he's a head coach. He's got to be a head coach somewhere and call the plays as the head coach, like other head coaches do. So he deserves that. It's ridiculous that this whispering campaign about him not interviewing well, which is just code for he doesn't look like us. We don't know him, and so we're not going to hire him. Which is it's where we are. It's the reality of the NFL. So I'm hoping that I don't think he'll come here. I'm hoping that Washington takes a serious look at Anthony Lynn. I think he'd be a perfect kind of guy for the OC job. I wouldn't mind Pat Shurmur. I mean, he's been a coordinator before and done it pretty well. That would be fine too. But I would love to see, Ron Rivera give somebody an opportunity that really hasn't had the opportunity to do it yet. And I know that will be hard for him to do going into year 4. He's got to win next year. I get it. You may not want to take that chance, but I think it would be great if he could do that.
Let's talk about Houston a little bit. DeMeco Ryans, 49ers defensive coordinator, it's been alluded that he's going to be the next coach for Houston Texans. And anybody that want to take that job may be crazy because they get rid of a coach after 1 year. And even if he's been successful, what's you all's thoughts as far as him going there and him getting the opportunity when Eric Bieniemy can't get a head coaching job?
I think he played there. He played there. I think less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So they're familiar with him, and I mean, if you look at the things that he's done in his short career as a coach, a defensive coordinator, I'll be chopping at the bits too, trying to sign him. You know what I mean? So I think that's the only thing that kind of trumps him from Eric, because the enemy's under, I guess you can say, Andy Reid's tutelage, and they feel like, well, everything that he's doing is because Andy Reid is basically giving him, the chance to be in that seat. And that's not fair, because I feel like, trust me, he's been there long enough. Regardless of who's the guy with the game plan, he's calling it to some degree. And that's the same thing with what some of these other coaches are getting opportunities from, just being a part of a good umbrella, just being under a good group of men, and it trickles down, the trickle down effect. But when it comes to Houston's picking up that, I mean, he's an awesome D coordinator. So it's not a surprise to me that Houston's going to go after somebody that they're very familiar with, and he was just a player with almost less than 10 years ago.
Was that a smart move for him, knowing that the Texans ownership, they don't keep head coaches long if you don't succeed right off the bat?
Any opportunity he can get, and really right now, whatever is out there, and that's the one thing we're saying is give him the opportunity. That's what's not happening. That's what's not transpiring right now with a lot of these guys. They got 5 head coaching jobs possibly open. They have a lot of good coaches out there, and I'm not going with the African American or white or whatever. I think you hire the best coaches you can get. It doesn't matter how old they are, how young they are, what they look like. You're looking for someone that can do the X's and O's. And that's what this league needs to do. You need to look at these players that's out there, former players. We need more former players in the coaches and coaching staffs anyway. It'd be a better game. And when we come back, we talk about former players. We had a couple of former players in our picks this year. They didn't do too well. One of them name was Gary. We'll be back in a moment.
One more thing.
Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus Speakers Bureau offers you various opportunities to connect with former and current players along with Tony and the crew. For more information, go to redmagplus.com Speakers Bureau.
One more thing.
Gary has jokes, and he needs to be a joke because he was a joke with the picks this year. But congratulations has to go out to Alex Parker, who just beat me by 1. He wins the picks this year. And Gary is, as I say, dead last. He don't even need to say anything.
I gave Alex his picks.
Hey, Gary, I would be silent.
You gave him the information he needed.
I would be silent if I
wanted Alex to win.
Okay, well, speaking of picks, let's talk about this Super Bowl. I want each and every one of you to tell me who you think was winning and why. We only got 3 minutes, so everybody take about 50 seconds. Donna, starting with you first.
I think it's the Philadelphia Eagles, Tony. I said from the beginning of the season and throughout the season that the Eagles had the most firepower. And I think that they come in the healthiest team coming into the Super Bowl. So, sorry, Patrick, It won't happen this year again.
Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I just think again, we come back to the receivers. I just don't know how Kansas City stops them. I will say this though, Andy Reid with 2 weeks after a bye, he's been pretty good, and he's going to get 2 weeks this week. This time to prepare for one game. But I just don't know how the Chiefs defense stops the Eagles offense enough to win the game.
Kels.
Yeah, I think David makes a good point. Andy Reid is scary, but I think Philadelphia right now, they're getting it done on both sides of the football. Too many weapons on offense. They can also run the football, and their defense can make stops and put pressure on a Patrick Mahomes. We have to see if that high ankle sprain is going to be healthy. And the Philadelphia Eagles are the healthier team going into the Super Bowl, so they're going to be hard to stop. I think Nick Sirianni and company gets the Super Bowl.
G.
This is just going to prove I let you guys win. Kansas City's going to win the football game. I'm just letting you know I let you guys win because you guys are so horrible.
You let us.
You didn't want to dominate it no more, right? Sit down and talk to me.
I'm going with Philadelphia. I think a potent run game. The receivers are going to be too much for Kansas City. And then on the opposite side of the ball, you have shutdown corners. You have a front five that's just ferocious. To me, it's too much. Philadelphia Eagles, like Gary said, they're gonna take it. Yeah, they're gonna take it. It's not gonna be a contest. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm looking at it like this, and all of it, and you're right. Philadelphia has the most talent, but at the same time, I'm looking at Kansas City has been there before as well, and they look like a team that they want to win. And I'm looking at them as being the underdogs. And a few years ago, the last Super Bowl that I was in, we went in there 14-2, and we went in there against a Oakland team that got in there on the last day of the year. And they went in there and they tore us a new one in that Super Bowl. So what I'm going to do is look for Kansas City right now. And when we come back here next week, we'll be talking about that. It's like they say in Macbeth, where should we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain. By the time we meet next week, we're going to throw thunder in jail and get rid of rain. As we say, we never say goodbye. We say in the minute.
Here is our solution today. I present to you what I present to me. Why don't you say it along with me? Say it along with me. If you're feeling what I'm feeling, then you know what I mean. Keep doing the same thing, you're gonna get the same result. So amazing, so amazing. I'm singing about you. So amazing, so amazing.